Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back with you again this week for the podcast that we love to do each week on Alabama football. Lance and I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. We're so glad you do. Lance does a great job in the studio of mixing everything, putting up the great videos and pictures. I want to remind you to check out his site at rolltidebama.com and freelancepictures.com for some great content on Alabama football. Well, today in the podcast, we're going to review last week's game against the Auburn Tigers. In the second segment, we're going to take a look at the standout players of the game. And in the third and final segment, we're going to preview the upcoming game against LSU.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com.
Well, hello everyone. This is DC with the DC Capstone Report. We're glad to be here. On our first segment today, we're going to review the past game against the Auburn Tigers. Yes, the Iron Bowl was played last Saturday in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama comes away with a great victory, 42-13, to maintain their perfect record of 8-0. The Auburn Tigers dropped to 5-3. Looks like it was a really good game from the very beginning. Alabama really played well. They held Auburn scoreless in the first quarter, held them to only 6 points in the second and third quarter, and didn't give up a touchdown until the fourth quarter and beat them 42-13. Overall, it was a really good, rounded game, well-rounded game. It was a rivalry game, of course. They always say when you play the Iron Bowl, you can throw out the records, but this time, the better team, Alabama, showed up and showed out the entire game. It really wasn't in jeopardy much. I was very pleased with the way we came out and played the game. One thing I can describe is physical. You know, when you play the Iron Bowl, it's always a physical game. There's always a lot of hard hitting. But in this game, I thought Alabama's defense played a very physical game. I enjoyed seeing the tackles. They were just running through the tackles. Held Auburn in this game. They didn't have a single rusher over 100 yards. And so that's really big. Auburn likes to get their run game started in order to help their passing game. But Auburn didn't get their run game off the ground at all. Their leading rusher was their third-string quarterback, tailback, Mark Anthony Richards. He actually had 14 carries for 57 yards. But Tank Bigsby was held to 39 yards. Sean Shivers was held to 17 yards. And it just did a great job up front. Started with our defensive line. Thought we had a good pursuit with our linebackers, and then we had good help from our safeties that really closed out some plays on their running back. So I think we held them in check on their running game, and we made them throw more. Bo Nix had 38 attempts. He had 23 completions, but he only had 227 yards in those 23 completions, and 2 of them were interceptions. So we forced them to throw the ball, and they got out of their comfort zone. They couldn't run like they wanted to, and our defense really did a good job in this game. I thought they played well. They had some plays where Auburn dropped a pass here or two, but really I think the Alabama defense played well. We pressured the quarterback a lot better in this game than we have in prior games. You know, one of the things that had been lacking is that pass rush, but in this game, Christopher Allen got a sack. Christian Barmore got a sack. Will Anderson Jr. was credited with the sacks. We had 3 sacks and 2 interceptions. Malachi Moore got an interception on a beautiful play when he broke on the ball. And Brian Branch, the other freshman, got his first interception of the year. So overall, I believe the defense played a great game, holding Auburn to 13 points and not letting a single rusher get over 100 yards. And so I really did a good job. On offense, we came out, and I thought we really played a really good game on offense. Mac Jones only had 18 completions in this game for 302 yards. But of those 18 completions, 5 were for touchdowns. And he made the Offensive Player of the Week, 5 touchdowns on 18 completions out of 26 attempts. So I thought he did an excellent job in the passing game. He hit the open receivers. He threw to multiple receivers. A couple of tight ends got caught passes. One for a touchdown. Najee Harris caught a couple of passes out of the backfield. but mainly John Metchie and Devonta Smith did the most damage in the passing games. Devonta Smith had another great game, having 7 receptions in this game and 2 touchdowns. John Metchie had 6 receptions and 2 touchdowns. So if you review this Auburn game, I thought it was a complete game. Was it the best game? No, it wasn't the best game. I think we're still yet to play our best game, but I think we're improving and getting better. And that's what we said last week on the podcast. In this Auburn game, we wanted to see our defense continue the improvement that we'd shown. And so I think they did that. I think they came out, played a really good game, and it was important for us to make a statement on defense, and we did just that. And our offense played well enough to win this game. 42-13, what a great rivalry in the Iron Bowl. Now, one thing I think that we haven't talked enough about this year is our special teams play. And I thought in this game, our punter did a good job of getting the ball off. He had 4 punts in this game for a 37-yard, almost 38-yard average. I thought he did a really good job punting the ball. And Will Reichard was perfect again on extra points. He had 6 extra points in this game. Did a real good job kicking the ball. And our special teams coverage did a really good job of stopping Auburn's fast returners and limiting them on their return game. And in turn, Devonta Smith did a really good job filling in for Slade Bolden, who was filling in for Jalen Waddle. So here you have our third team. When you can say our third team punt returner is Devonta Smith, you've said a whole mouthful in that. So he did a good job of filling in, and I thought we need to talk about our special team in this Auburn game because it really, really continues to get better each and every week. So review of the Auburn game, really good, complete game, coming away with the Iron Bowl victory 42-13 over the Auburn Tigers. Well, in the second segment today, we're going to take a look at our standout players of the game. First, let's start on offense. You don't have to look any further than Mac Jones, the quarterback of this Alabama Crimson Tide. He played most of the game. Bryce Young got a little bit into the last couple of series, but Mac Jones, it was his game. It was a revenge game or a redemption game for him. He came out, didn't throw a single interception in this game. You know, last year he had 2 pick sixes in the game that cost us the game. But in this particular game, he came out and threw 5 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions for 302 yards, and he made the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. So he is one of my standout players of the game on offense. My next standout player of the game on offense was Devonta Smith. We talk about Devonta Smith a lot. As I've told you, I believe he's going to go down in history as the best wide receiver ever to come out of the University of Alabama. And he did nothing in this game that would give you any indication that that's not going to be true. He had 7 receptions for 171 yards. He averaged 24 yards every time he touched the ball, and he had 2 touchdowns. So, Devonta Smith did a great job. He is another standout player of the game. Another standout player of the game is a guy we haven't talked about since early in the season. That's John Metchie. I think John Metchie came into his own this season. In this game, he had 6 catches for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns as well receiving in the game. I thought Mac Jones found him when Devonta Smith was covered. Now, Alabama does a good job of moving Devonta Smith around. Coach Saban said today in his press conference, Devonta Smith is a smart receiver. He can play every position, X, Y, and Z position on the field in receiving, and moving him around allows him to get open. But when he's covered, John Metchie was able to get uncovered himself and do really good damage in this game, touchdown-wise. So having 2 touchdowns from John Metchie is really good in this Auburn game. And my third offensive standout player of the game has got to be Jahleel Billingsley. I really believe he stepped onto the scene now as a pass catcher, another viable offensive weapon in this already vaunted offense. Jahleel Billingsley is a matchup nightmare for other teams, and he had a touchdown pass in this game and 2 receptions for 33 yards. So look for him to continue his offensive production, even get better in the days ahead. So my offensive standout players of the game are Mac Jones, Devonta Smith, and John Metchie and Jahleel Billingsley. On defense, look at Josh Jobe. It's a name that we haven't talked about this year. Number 28, he had 5 tackles and 5 assists, being on 10 tackles, leading tackler in this game. and did an excellent job of shutting down the corner on those offensive weapons that Auburn had out wide. So Josh Jobe has played a good all year. Hadn't really called his name as a standout player, but in this game he stepped up and did a really good job. Also in the defensive backfield, Malachi Moore. Again, Malachi Moore, a freshman, had an interception in this game. And if you watch that play, he broke on the ball at the right time and caught the pass, intercepted the pass from the Auburn receiver. It could have easily been completed, but he just made a perfect play on the ball, broke in front of the ball, and intercepted it to stop another Auburn drive. So Malachi Moore, again, is another standout player of the game on defense. And my third standout player of the game on defense is a player that we haven't talked much about this year, but he's one of our outside linebackers that I don't think gets enough credit, and that's number 4, Christopher Allen. Christopher Allen, in this game, he had 3 tackles, one assist, and he had a sack in this game as well. I thought he really played well on the edge. Auburn has been known to try to push the edge out there on some of their runs, and he stayed in his position, was able to fill his gaps, and then really did a good job rushing the ball. So I think Christopher Allen doesn't get enough credit where credit is due, and this week he's one of my standout players of the game. So on defense, my standout players of the game are Josh Jobe, Malachi Moore, and Christopher Allen. Well, that brings us to the third and final segment. We're going to review the game coming up after the Auburn game. And we don't get to say that very much. In this year of 2020 COVID world where we changed everything around and we've had scheduling shuffling, we've had schedules shuffled again. And this week, prior to the Auburn game, we learned that the SEC was going to shuffle the schedule. So instead of playing Arkansas immediately after the Auburn game, we go into Baton Rouge to play the LSU Tigers to make up a game that had to be postponed earlier in the season due to the outbreak of COVID virus at the LSU complex. So we're going to go into Baton Rouge after the Auburn game. Well, as we start this preview, how is that going to affect this team? Well, I think that we're going to have to, in this game, the players are going to have to realize that this is something different. It's not something they've done before, and it's something that we're going to have to look out for. And we don't need to be caught on a downwards, being down after a great victory over our rival, the Auburn game. But I think by them shuffling the schedule and putting LSU there, it's really going to give us an advantage. I could see us letting down against an Arkansas team that hasn't been very good, but I don't see us letting down against the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. We know that LSU wants to do everything they can to derail our championship hopes. They don't want us to win the championship this year. They don't want us to go to the college football playoffs. And if they can beat us in Baton Rouge this coming Saturday night, they would certainly put a damper on our championship hopes. And they don't want us to. They want to be on their top of the game. So I don't think that we're going to have as much of a letdown or potential for a letdown against LSU, simply because it is LSU, it is in Baton Rouge, and it is a rivalry game for us. We get to go in there and beat the team that beat us last year and knocked us out of our playoff hopes, and then went on to win the national championship. So it's a bit of a revenge factor. The second thing going forward is one of our biggest rivals that we go up against in recruiting. So if we can go in there in Baton Rouge and make a statement game on national television, then we have an opportunity to really win some recruiting battles for some players that we're going head-to-head against right now. So for those of you that's wondering or asking, is Alabama poised for a letdown because we're playing a game after Auburn? I would say if we hadn't have shuffled the schedule and put LSU there, then we might have been if we were playing Arkansas. But I really think this team is going to be ready. They're going to have their head in the game. They're going to be ready to play and have some redemption from the loss that they took at home last year against LSU Tigers. So what about this game? How do we see it matching up? Well, I think LSU, to be honest, is down this year a little bit. They lost a lot going to the NFL. They've had some departures due to opting out from playing this year. Even had one of their top receivers opt out this week from playing in this game. And they just had a little turmoil going on there in Baton Rouge with all the stuff that's happened in the offseason. So, I think the turnover in coaching is going to catch up with them. I think the turnover in players is going to catch up with them. And I think Alabama catches them at the right time. We're ascending. Our defense is getting better. We're peaking. We're not there yet. but I think we're going to catch them at the right time. So what do we need to do going in to get a victory and coming out of Baton Rouge with a victory? Well, number one, we need to play mistake-free football. When you got a team like LSU that's got some aggressive players, they got some athletic players, if they can get some turnovers, they can really hurt us in this game. So we need to play mistake-free football. That means don't turn the ball over and don't get silly mistakes, make silly mistakes and penalties. So we need to have a well-rounded game and play mistake-free football. On offense, we need to be able to go in there and take what the LSU defense gives us. This LSU defense has not been putting up great stats this year as they have in years past. So we have an opportunity to go in there and take advantage. Now, they have one of the best cornerbacks in the nation. One of the matchups that I'm looking forward to seeing is Derek Stingley Jr. going up against Devonta Smith, and I look for him to be matched up on him. This is a great time for Devonta Smith to really shine on the national stage and stake his claim to the Biletnikoff Award. So I look for Alabama to go in and try to take advantage of moving Devonta Smith around and getting him in some matchups that are having advantage over and getting him the ball a lot. I think if Mac Jones throws to the receivers that they give us, in other words, try to take advantage of what they give us instead of trying to make something happen, then he's poised for another great game, and our offense is poised for that. In order to set that up, though, I think Najee Harris has to have a good game in this game. I think in the Auburn game, he almost had 100 yards. He had about 96 yards rushing. But I think at some point, the Auburn, he had 11 carries for 96 yards, but for a while, Auburn really stopped him and thwarted him. And I believe they did that through some run blitzes. Look for LSU to try to do that. And how we combat that in our offensive line with running some different blocking schemes would bode well for us to get some better rushing attack against LSU. If we get a good rushing attack out of Najee Harris and Brian Robinson, and then we can come right behind that with play action passing, I think this is set up for Alabama to have a big offensive production against this LSU defense that's not showed much so far this year. Well, this is still LSU, though. They may be down, they may be maybe a little depleted, but they still have some athletic players on offense that we need to be careful about. We need to go in there with our defense and play like we did against Auburn. We need to run through the tackles, play aggressively, and play physical. We're going to need to out-physical them in this game. I believe if we put a hat on defense, we can really do a good job of that. We need to stop their running game and force them into passing. They don't have the Joe Burrow this year at quarterback. So if we can shut down their running game and put their quarterback in a passing situation where he have to pass the ball, I think it's going to really set up our young defensive backs for opportunities in this game to get some more interceptions. So I believe if we can sell out against the run and stop their run, it's going to put us in a position to get some picks, maybe even a pick six in this game. So I think overall, if we go in and play the game that I know we can play in Baton Rouge, we go down there to have a redemption game where we, not much for revenge, but redemption. We come back and show that Alabama is consistently the better team every year. It'll help us in recruiting. It'll help us in the national stage of all of our players to create value for themselves, for the NFL, and for these postseason awards. And it'll help us in our national championship playoff race on the national stage. I think we do it. I think we go in there. I think we really exhibit our will, impose our will on LSU, and I believe we come out of there with a great victory. I think Alabama leaves Baton Rouge that night on a national stage and beats LSU at home at night 52-17. Well, that's been the DC Capstone Report. We thank you for tuning in this week. We appreciate all of our listeners out there for tuning in each and every week. We'll be back again this time next week. Until then, this is DC signing off with a big Roll Tide.